and you might find that you get slightly better quality if you turn your camera off rather than have it on throughout the whole thing. So unless you particularly want everyone to watch you watching me, then feel free to turn your cameras off. Today's webinar is titled "The Future of PE: Reflections on the Past 12 Months." And we're going to discuss some of the impact on PE across our region from the last 12 months, as well as looking towards the future and what the future for our subject might look like. I'm going to now try and change the slide over. There we go. So we're very lucky to be joined today by 5 outstanding physical educators to join our discussion. So I'd like to introduce you to Alan Dunstan, who is the subject lead for PE at the British International School of Riyadh, having previously worked across Southeast Asia. Lewis Keynes, we're very grateful that Lewis has joined us all the way from Malaysia. Lewis is Director of Sport at the Alice Smith School in Malaysia. Johnny Coombs, many of you will know, is Director of Sport at BSAC in the UAE. My good friend Sean Gale is currently at Malvern College in Egypt. And Rob Subiani is Director of Sport at St Christopher's in Bahrain. And thank you all for joining us and giving us your time today. For our viewers, please just share any questions or any comments you might have in the chat bar, and I will monitor these throughout the session. And we will have a Q&A session at the end of each little section, so that you can ask any questions of our speakers as we go. And please remember that we're recording this webinar, so you can refer back to it anytime you like. We'll share it via the network website, and also please do share it with any colleagues you might have that weren't able to join us today. So that's enough from me. I am delighted to introduce Alan and Lewis, the Infinite Learners. Welcome, gentlemen. Now, this is the first technical bit, so I'm going to stop sharing, and hopefully you're going to be able to share.
Yeah, thanks, Phil. I'll just share my screen now. Okay, Phil, all good to start?
Yeah, all good. Off we go.
Right. Thank you very much. Great to see everybody, and thanks to Phil for inviting us onto the webinar. It's particularly nice for me personally being back involved with the BSME organisation after 8 fantastic years in Forbes as head of PE at the British School Manila. Whilst I'm introducing myself, can you please complete the poll that Phil's about to put on there? It's about your current context. We'd just like to know, are you face-to-face, are you teaching online, or are you a mixture of both, a bit of a hybrid?
Alan, are you sharing slides at the minute, mate? I can't see them. I don't know if anyone else can.
Yeah, is everybody? Phil, can we see the slides?
No, I can't see. I can see you. I can't see your slides.
Okay, let me try again then. Sorry.
Yeah, there we go. It's coming up now.
All right, here we go.
Yeah, bang on.
Fantastic. So as I was saying there, if you could just, if Phil's going to put a poll online there to let us know whether you're face-to-face, whether you're teaching online, or whether you're a mixture of both. So as we've said already, thanks to Phil for the introduction, I'm head of PE at the British International School of Riyadh, the diplomatic quarter, where I'm also part of the primary leadership team. And Lewis and I started the Infinite Learners brand back in July 2020, and we started by writing articles about the future of PE and tips for creating a successful team. We then set up a website and we leapt into the podcast arena through our Infinite Leaders live podcast. And over the past 7 months, we've interviewed over 36 different types of leaders and put out there 2,000 minutes of learning. And we're incredibly grateful to our guests for sharing those journeys with us. What we won't provide in the next half an hour is specific solutions and predictions, but what we will offer are suggestions on how to find solutions. So you may find it useful to have a pen and paper And like we say to our guests on the podcast, hopefully get ready for some gems of wisdom and a bit of positivity to start 2021.
Cheers, Alan. And again, thanks, Phil, for having us. It's a treat to be here, and congratulations on getting this together. I think it's a cracking idea, and one I might be stealing for FOBASIA. My name's Lewis Keynes. I'm the chair of FOBASIA PE and Sport. That's the Federation for British Schools in Asia, the sort of Asian counterpart of BSME. I've been teaching in Asia for the last 8 years, and since September, I've been at the Alice Smith School in Kuala Lumpur. I'm certainly pleased that today I just need to provide a virtual and visual presence and not a physical one, because that would have made things quite difficult. And in the 30 minutes that we've got ahead of us, you'll get a sort of hand luggage of the content that we've started to consider and reflect upon over the last 6 or 7 months, as Alan mentioned. Hopefully it's enough to spark some discussion and to give you some things to think about. We don't profess to know all the answers, but what we are active PE teachers in leadership positions in schools, and we're on the same journey as you guys are, and it's one that's going through quite a storm at the minute. So like you, we hope that everything works out and everything's positive in the end, and it'd be nice to hear your opinions on our thoughts as we go through and at the end. And Phil, do we have the results from the poll there? It would be good just to flash those up if so.
Yeah, we should. You should all be able to see them. We've had 23 people fill it in so far. 2 face-to-face, 15 teaching online, and 6 a mixture of both.
Okay, so a real mixed bag. Hopefully there'll be enough in terms of breadth for you all to get something out of this.
Thanks, Lewis. Great picture there. Everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face, said Mike Tyson. So let's just reflect for a second and think about that moment when we all got punched and your school closed for the first time. For me, it was beginning of March 2020, and I just got back from skiing in Japan with my family, and I was looking ahead to the busiest part of the year for fixtures and trips. Initially, we thought we'd be back in 3 weeks, and at that point, the Chinese schools all had a little chuckle and a laugh and told us it would be a lot longer than that. And they were right. Weeks became months, and we began to realise that the virus was going nowhere. The New Zealanders locked everybody out, the UK let everybody in, and everybody else was somewhere in between. And school continued, but in a strange and new format. The summer came, PCR tests, fold stones, kids are back, kids are out, blended learning, hybrid learning, face-to-face, asynchronous, synchronous, constant change. My own kids have not done any face-to-face PE or played a sports fixture in a year. Is this a knockout punch for PE and sport?
Yeah, we never thought we'd have to have a world where we don't deliver fixtures, where we don't have fixtures, we don't deliver PE face-to-face, and I'm sure most of us never actually considered teaching our subject online. You've probably gone through a range of emotions. I know everybody has over the last 6 months, so you've worked probably harder and in a different way. That's been more difficult than your usual job, and it's added to the stresses and the strains. It's likely by this stage we've been through the worst of it emotionally, and we can start to at least consider what's coming ahead of us. And sometimes that hits us hard when change happens initially, but the reality might not be as bad as we think, and hopefully today will bring you some positivity on that. We do have some control over how we feel, and we can frame our minds to be positive if we've got some kind of model or way of allowing us to do that. It's all right to feel sorry for ourselves. I'm sure that we've all been through that. And we'd like for you now just to fill out the poll. Again, if you just click the little activities button on the right-hand side, there's a poll for question number 2. Just want to get your kind of opinion on what words reflect how you feel about your PE provision at the moment. So they range from very positive and optimistic through to about as far away from positive and optimistic as you possibly could be. If you could just pop a vote in that poll now, it'd be really good to get some kind of feedback on that. I can see that there's been many votes already, and most of us seem particularly positive and optimistic, or very positive and optimistic. We've got 14 votes in that, but equally not particularly positive and optimistic's got 11 votes as well. So a real mixed bag at the minute. And again, you can give yourselves a break for feeling one way or the other. Everybody goes through this at different paces, and hopefully what we'll present to you might help. So this is the Infinite approach. The Infinite approach is a 4-part open-ended model to sort of manage change and to make progress. The 4 parts making it up are the what, the who, the why, and the how. It's not a linear model. It doesn't need to be done in a particular order, but each of these 4 do interlink, and there's a lot of interplay between them. The who and the why are crucial parts to this, including knowledge of self, but the what and the how is really our focus today. And in the chat box for the poll, you'll see that we've got 3 questions in there. What we want you to do in addition to that poll question, if you don't mind, is on your pen and a piece of paper that you've got with you, hopefully, or something nearby. We want to ask you 4 questions. The 4 questions are going to flag up in the chat that Alan's going to put in there, but you don't need to answer them in the chat. You can just answer them privately. What's the biggest challenge that you're facing right now? And we'll contextualize that in a little bit. Why is it important that you make progress with that? How will you address it or overcome it? And who can help? So as we go through this, hopefully by the end, we'll have some tools and some ideas of what we can do to try and address at least 2, hopefully more of those questions. What's the biggest challenge you're facing right now? Why is it important to make progress? How will you address it or overcome it? And who can help? And I know that our focus is the what and the how, and Alan's told me to be really brief to contextualize this part, which is the who and the why, and I'll try and do that as best I can. The interplay between each 4 of these ideas is massive. If you've ever read a Simon Sinek book, you're very much aware of his sort of focus on the why is important. For personal, departmental, and organizational purposes, we all need a purpose and something that we're working towards. And the why is all about why it's important for you to overcome your challenge. And the picture you can see on the screen is a vision tree. And this is, through a lot of discussions with Alan, an idea that we've come up with to try and contextualize what a purpose is. The roots of the vision, they're strong, they stay underneath the ground, and they're out of sight for the vast majority of the time, but they keep the vision where it is and allow a mission to grow from it, which is a trunk, a really strong, robust core that helps you to grow everything that you're doing up from there. The branches are the objectives. The objectives might break, they might move, and they might grow in some slightly different ways to what we're used to, and they might be a little bit unpredictable at times. But generally, they're quite solid too. And at the end of those objectives are your aims, and your aims will be the sort of leaves of the tree. The aims change with the seasons, and we're going through a particularly turbulent season for PE and sport at the moment, where the weather's battering our vision tree, isn't it? It's absolutely battering it, and it's blown off most of the aims, if not all of them. The branches are getting damaged, and what we've got to do, because of COVID, lockdowns, SOPs and such, is contextualize that and think of the who. And the who is us, our team, our school, our department, our wider community. And what we've got to try and do is create a culture that protects and tends to that tree to help it to flourish. And that happens with the right behaviours. And knowing who we are allows us to know ourselves and to know those around us a little bit better. And once we know that, we can work together better to protect our why and to really support our why moving forward. And through the work that Alan and I do, we look at autobiographical projects and work on conscious competencies as a huge part of that. And I did promise you at the beginning that Alan told me to be brief, so that's about as brief as I can be, that will allow you to contextualize as we move forward into the what and the how and the focuses of today's session. Alan.
Yeah, thanks, Lewis. A key theme that's cropped up on our podcast is that context provides the narrative. And in this webinar, we'll keep coming back to that question, what is the biggest challenge you're facing right now? What we'll do is we'll have a look at the table on the next slide and maybe jot down your initial thoughts to that question. Now, every school is experiencing something completely different. And this table might give you some examples of what you have to take into account on a day-to-day basis. The context is the key to unlocking many doors. Now, here in Saudi, we've got 5 schools as part of our sort of franchise that are operating slightly different, completely down to context. And staffing has been a big narrative builder for us at the moment. And over the past 4 weeks, we've had to deal with a substantial amount of teachers being stuck in the UK or elsewhere. They've closed the travel corridor, the new variant appeared, and suddenly we've got all these staff that need to get back in country that suddenly then have to quarantine for 2 weeks and then come back into Saudi and then get a PCR test before they're ready back for work in a few days' time. So it literally happened over the Christmas holidays, and we had to adapt and pivot and be flexible and all those buzzwords that are going around at the moment. And it was amazing that it got done. And it's almost like adaptability has become the new normal and the new buzzword for PE teachers. Just consider then now, what's the biggest challenge again facing you? Is it staffing? Is it SOPs? Is it technology problems? Is it getting your students to turn their cameras on? What is your biggest challenge?
And you might have already started going in different directions to address your challenge. And for many, the content is the constant battle. What do you provide in terms of content for the children that are learning in your lessons? And as we all know, if we've had any work at all with a PE curriculum, a curriculum is never finished. It's a little bit tongue-in-cheek at the moment when you read on social media celebratory posts from teachers around the fact that they've finished planning or they've finished putting together their online offering and their online curriculum, because as we know, things are changing so much that there's bound to be more changes ahead of those. And we know that that's a constant battle, and it's a constant learning process as we go through. We know for ECA sports that participation rates in general are dropping, and that suggests a sign that children really value the social and emotional aspects of sport much more highly than the skill acquisition, the fitness and the health goals that maybe we focused on so much for so long. And the challenge becomes, how do we address those sort of shortcomings? Your challenges might be different to those. These are just choosing two in context of where we're at the moment. And one of the suggestions or one of the ideas is around really looking at trying to sift through what's out there. And in a recent article Alan and I wrote, we use an analogy that's called panning for gold. And if you've ever panned for gold and you've been to one of those fantastic sort of real life museums in the UK or something similar, you chuck loads of stones and dirt in your pan and you sift through it and you try and find a hidden gem. And at the minute, we find that that's a really positive way for us to consider and to find solutions to our biggest challenges, to put all that content in that might help without real too much thought. Add the research, add the resources, add what you think might help and give it a good shake, evaluate that, discuss it, find time with your department to find disagreements. That's okay, you know, resolve those conflicts and make them professional and try and work out what it is you disagree on. Take those things out that don't work and get rid of the stuff that really is really well planned and well structured for real life lessons but doesn't work online. Get rid of it and don't worry about that. Shelve it, come back to it later. If it's not working, get rid, be cutthroat and try your best to just thin out what it is that you're offering and really focus on those gems that are going to help you move through the challenge that you've got ahead of you. The gems will be those things that are left over. And then the idea is trying to find out who can help you implement those things and get those things into, whether it's your curriculum or your staffing plans or your finance budget approvals and suggestions moving forward. And it's okay to try those gems and to put them out there without knowing all the answers and without learning everything first. We're thinking on our feet at the minute, we're pivoting, we're learning, the children are learning, parents are learning. So don't feel like you need to spend forever learning how to really make the most of whatever it is that you've decided on your way forward. Get out there and live it and do it and go all in, dive in and learn on the job and be ready to retest and to gather feedback and to gather evaluation from staff, parents and students alike as you go along.
One of those nuggets of gold is a guy called Ronnie Heath. Now, he knew a number of years ago that change was needed in the PE world. And his vision was to combine learning behaviours and fundamental movement skills and showcase them as the key components of an inclusive primary curriculum. You can even drag this up and you could find that out quite easily that it fits into a senior curriculum as well. And on his podcast with us, he asks us, do you teach the same way that you were taught at school? Are you still doing the same things you were doing 12 months ago, 6 months ago, 6 weeks ago, or even 6 days ago? The pace of learning has changed and students and families and teachers have all had to adapt. Just consider for a second, what have you done to modify your practice to reflect this change? Now, Tony Wagner in The Global Achievement Gap, which is a great book for you all, often talks about the lack of progress that education has made in comparison with every other sector. Now, Wagner argues that not much has actually changed since Victorian times. Now, yes, technology has improved and teachers have more opportunity to innovate, but effectively, the concept remains similar. It's clear there's been no industrial style revolution in the education profession. And if we look at PE as a subject, games-based curriculum still dominate, units are based around sport. It doesn't hook in as many students as we think it does, and it's certainly not relevant to the current generation. In our podcast with Dr. Susie Stevens, who's a leading New Zealand PE doctor, she talks about the relation between research and evidence-based practice and compares our profession to medicine. Do doctors continue to use a drug that has been deemed harmful by research? Of course they don't. And we need to do the same in our profession. So has COVID gifted us an opportunity? How can we move our subject forward and create our own PE revolution?
And as Alan referred to there, you know, if you pull that idea of we've never had an industrial revolution in teaching and bring it into PE, I think this period that we're going through now is about as close as we've ever been. You know, we're going through essentially a period of change now that's faster paced than it ever has been in PE. Because we've got so many challenges to face, we've had to pivot, we've had to think on our feet. And change brings challenge, and challenge sometimes makes us feel anxious, as does change. So again, going back to those key questions, what is your biggest challenge at the moment, and how will you begin to address it or overcome it? And this links us to the third question on the poll that we've asked. And if you haven't answered this one already, please can you just visit that and have a look. How positive do you feel around the potential for change within our subject? Do you view that as something that's very positive and optimistic? You feel good about the potential for change? And obviously you can see the other options there, positive and optimistic, not particularly, or as about as far away as you possibly can be. And we're looking at the minute, we've got what we got there, 31 votes out of 40 odd people in here. And the vast majority of people are positive and optimistic, which, to be honest with you, isn't a massive surprise speaking to PE teachers. You'd be amazed at how that sort of view differs if you speak to other departments within your school and other schools. But as PE teachers, we generally have that kind of roll your sleeves up and get on with it attitude, which is a credit to what we do and the sort of outlook we have. But equally, if you're not positive and optimistic, that's perfectly understandable. There's a lot for us to get our head around, and the profession that we're in now might very well be different and be starting to make a huge leap from the profession that we qualified in however many years ago we were at university.
Yeah, thanks, Lewis. Panning for gold, we come back to that expression now, where it exposes those hidden skills and values that we always knew were there underneath all the rubble. And how many times on interviews have we talked about why these skills are so important for children to learn? How many subjects have the opportunity to address the range of social skills, collaborative skills, relationships, and values that we do? And these skills are so transferable to other subjects, and ultimately are the skills that employers are looking for down the line. How many times do we capture situations where students make good decisions, where they manage conflict, where they show resilience in the face of adversity? And it's down to us to explore these learning moments that are essential for quality learning to take place. Matthew McConaughey, the actor, he's wrote an outstanding new book called Green Lights, which we fully recommend. And he talks about the best and most valuable learning takes place during times of struggle. It's now our job to consider whether this is the opportunity we've been waiting for to put these hidden gems to the front and center of a new PE revolution. The question is how will we find these hidden gems that will work in your context?
Flick the switch to light up the room. Try not to look around in the dark. There are people out there that can help. Our harshest critics are often parents and children. And how do our harshest critics feed back to us? Do we give them the opportunity to do that? How do they want us to deliver? How do they want to be engaged? How will they be engaged? We know from teaching and from pedagogical research that there's often very different views of what should and shouldn't be right for children, from families, from children, from teachers themselves. But usually we're all in the same boat around wanting the best for a student. Right now we're all in the same boat, rowing in the same direction, which isn't always the case. And the direction we're rowing in is straight back to school as quickly as possible. Everybody wants children back in school. Children don't want to be at home, and families don't want their children at home at the moment. They want them in schools if schools are safe. So if we all want the same thing, can we consult and get a student voice? Can we light up the room and make sure that we're not stumbling around in the dark? And consider how you interact and work with parents and students. ask some of those questions that maybe you're afraid to ask, or that maybe you're a little bit anxious about asking because you don't want to hear the answer. Maybe it's because it might involve more work. You don't think it'll be valuable. You might not want to open yourself up and be vulnerable to asking for the help or the opinion of parents and children. All those things would be completely understandable at the minute. But they give us a better idea of contextualizing. And as Alan talked about earlier, the context is the narrative that will allow us to really focus our attention on the intention of what we're doing. And hopefully taking on board a lot of opinion will help us to get a clearer picture of what we can do to best support students.
So can you flick that switch that Lewis is talking about? Is there a right or wrong in what we're doing or what you do? And as Lewis says, it all comes back to the context. How does the vehicle of delivery influence student outcomes? And let us consider the two vehicles in the picture. Both have the intention of getting us to work. Now, when I lived and worked in Manila, I had a Vespa, and it was great for weaving in and out of city traffic. But if I had that Vespa here in Riyadh, it'd be a death trap where I need my 4x4. The activity, the content or approach to learning you choose is just the vehicle by which you achieve those hidden gems. And Ronnie Heath talks about this a lot. He reckons he could teach the entire PE curriculum objectives purely through teaching basketball. And yes, it might not give the kids breadth across a range of activities, but the basketball skills were not the intended outcome. Improving learning behaviors like collaboration, communication, and teamwork were. And it's about paying attention to the intention. If you read anything about high quality PE, the hidden gems are all the components that are front and center. When we say they happen, are we just expecting it to happen through osmosis? Where's the evidence that these skills are actually leaking through to the kids? Now, the physical aspect of PE will always be the most important aspect of our lessons, but does it have to be the intention? We can have a great football lesson where all kids are engaged and active and learning football skills, but the focus and the intention could be collaboration, which is a transferable skill that can be used everywhere in life. Focusing on purely football skills is limited to football and invasion games. When we deliver football for children to get better at football, they're just going to get better at football. Do we need to change tact and make the intention more transferable to real life? And once again, it comes back to that saying, how can we pay more attention to the intention? Because good intentions make good outcomes.
And, you know, we all know that we can select physical activity resources and apply them with little thought from our previous experience from social media. You know, you look at some of the professional learning networks and groups on social media, and there's a physical activity, online learning based game or gimmick for absolutely every sort of pathway and like or dislike that people have. And there's nothing wrong with choosing those if they're right and they get engagement for your children. But my perception of those and my opinion would be, are we just trying to maybe just fill the gap short term? Or are we actually looking at trying to provide something that doesn't really have an expiry date, that isn't just fitness based, that we can apply and have a little bit of depth with as we go along, whether it is through face-to-face or hybrid learning? And I know we've got a mixture of people at different phases on that journey. But most of these gimmicks and most of these one-off lessons are very short-term. They do have expiry dates. And again, they're usually fitness-based, which maybe doesn't turn every child on. We know there's no cookie-cutter approach. Every school is different. You can't be all things to all people. But you can reflect, research, and discuss. You know, as teachers, we can choose to be positive. We can ask questions, and we can make progress, and children can make progress too. There's some great research from the Education Endowment Foundation that really, through a series of meta-analysis, tells us that children can make progress through online learning. We don't know exactly what the perfect medium or platform is for that yet. There's evidence to suggest recorded or live does it, but progress can happen. And we can support one another and our students through what is essentially maybe a tough time, but also a time where we can be optimistic and we can maybe make some positive change. as teachers, we can now start to mould the future of our subject. We've never had a pause as long as this since PE came about and became part of our curriculum. And we know that PE is not a product or an approach to learning or a specific style of curriculum or a magic sort of bullet, and this is the only way that you can deliver it. We know that high quality PE isn't week 1 heading, week 2 dribbling, week 3 passing. And it's within our hands, and we've got the ability now to innovate and do what's right for the context that we're in, and to practice what we preach. We say to the students regularly to do their research, to do their work, and to find what the best way forward is. And really, we've got to put our money where our mouth is a little bit now, and do a lot of that. And we'll get it wrong sometimes along the way, but with the right attention on the intention, we can start to make some positive changes and see some of the opportunities in the difficulties that lay ahead of us. So we want to start to just wrap this up really by revisiting those 4 questions that we mentioned at the beginning of this half an hour to contextualize that model that we presented. So going back to those 4 questions again, what's the biggest challenge that you're facing right now? Why is it important to make progress? How will you do it, and who can help? You'll have those on a piece of scrap paper in front of you. Hopefully what we've talked about in the last 25 minutes or so has maybe got some cogs ticking. I'd be amazed if you have all the answers to those questions from the last 25 minutes. I'm sure that you haven't, but hopefully they've got some type of reflection and process happening that will help you to contextualize the situation you're in and think about moving forward, and be positive and optimistic about the opportunity that we've got as practitioners and the opportunity we've got as educators to really start to make a difference and make some positive change despite the difficulties we're in. We'd love to hear from you and to share how you've got on with that. And if you do want to share your 4 questions with us, or you want to have a conversation with us about that process and get another sounding board, please do contact us. We're active on Twitter, and you can see us at theinfinitelearners.com. We know that Twitter is sometimes a bit of an arsenal for inflammatory comments and keyboard attacks, but hopefully we can be a drop of positivity and support within that. On that slide there's just a few links from some of our reading. What we've delivered over the past 15 or 16 slides has been a really amalgamation of our journey and our learning through the years that we've been teachers, and the last 6 or 7 months speaking to lots of people. And we're very much indebted to the quality and the opinion that they bring. But there's a few links there that are worth exploring in your own time. And Alan and I would be happy to address and to have a discussion around any questions you have now.
Excellent. Thank you very much, gentlemen. So I will post all of the links in the PE network after this. And if you haven't had the opportunity to visit the Infinite Learner website and listen to the podcasts, I really do recommend it. I've listened to Alan and Lewis speak a number of times over the course of the last 12 months or so, and they never get dull. And they're always very interesting, and I'm constantly learning stuff, so I would thoroughly recommend it. We have no questions, actually. We have lots of comments, which I will collate, and again, I will put it all on the website. But we have no direct questions. If anyone has any particular questions for Alan or Lewis, just type them in, and we can come back at the end of the webinar. So now we're going to move on. Thank you very much, gents. By the way, we're going to now move on.
Phil. Thank you.
To some slightly more specifics about our region and about the current practice and the kind of things that we are experiencing. And I'm really delighted that Johnny and his colleagues from BSAC down in Abu Dhabi can join us today. The way this is going to work is that I'm going to ask a question. I have a question for each of our speakers that has come from a PE department within the BSME family. So I'm going to ask Johnny a question. He may answer it directly, or he may use it as the start of a wider conversation. Johnny, you with me?
I'm there, yeah. Can you hear me?
Excellent. So Johnny, your question was, I'm just going to find it. How have you at BSAC been able to deliver blended PE when you've had some pupils in school and others online, and what have been your challenges and successes in doing that?
Yeah, perfect. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Johnny Coombs. I'm chair of BSME Sports, working across in Abu Dhabi. So I've sort of put this presentation together just really to put it into context on our journey, and then leading towards the model, which is blended learning, and how we've had to adapt along the way. Hopefully the last slides might give you a couple of takeaways that some of the things that we've put into our curriculum, we've helped our staff develop along the way, and a lot of the mistakes that we've made along the way that you might be able to sort of relate to along the way. Just to check there, Phil, have you got my slides? Are they presenting currently?
No, just stop and start again, because it just is stuck on the loading page.
Just try one more time. We'll carry on without hopefully the meeting. So just to start with, just in Abu Dhabi, UAE, we stopped for our Easter break 2 weeks early. Easter break was brought forward by 2 weeks, and we started our distance learning then. Since then, there's been students back in school from different year groups. We've had Key Stage 3, years 7, 8 and 9. They've not joined us in school at all since March. So we've had 3 different year groups that haven't had any live interaction with teachers for almost a year now. Our last competition was over in Muscat, February 2020. And our last sports fixture was the 5th of March in our local competitions here. We've had about 15% of the students that haven't ever come back to school. They've stayed on distance learning, whether that be for a cultural reason or a medical reason. They have not come back in. So we've always, even with the school groups that are in, we've had students that have been staying at home all the way through. So just in terms of how we developed, it was initial shock, I think, like everyone, post-Easter. We came back, there was a scramble to get teachers up to date with technology. There was a scramble to get things online and to really start the model of PE online. We led initially with a lot of online lessons in terms of videos that we uploaded and YouTube clips, and we were just sort of getting our head around Google Classrooms. As you can imagine, some of the PE staff weren't as clued up on their IT as other members of the school, but it was a big learning curve for us all. Quickly into term 3, we realised that the engagement in those videos from parent feedback from students was very low. We were dropping stuff onto Google Classrooms and students weren't engaging in it. And we got quickly to the realisation that we had to move to live lessons. Secondary school moved completely to live lessons, so you followed a timetable as you would in school. Primary school had a blended model, so they had some live, some recorded, with a mixture of students at home from there. So we got together as a PE department and we thought, how can we make this best fit ourselves? So there was a chance to reform, to reshape and sort of reflect on what we were doing. So the head of secondary PE, currently doing his master's, he led by a little bit of action research. He decided that he wanted to introduce a 5-year GCSE cycle, lead our lessons with a heavy sports science and GCSE terminology linked into all of the lessons that he was leading there. Linked very well. He currently linked that with the Youth Sports Trust. That's why he can't join us today. He's just feeding back on his master's program with the Youth Sports Trust, and he's implementing a 5 GCSE cycle, which really does, because we almost followed the syllabus and built that as we went through our online lessons. Additionally, we were restricted in the UAE with what we could do in the classroom. So we did some stretching, some yoga, some skill drills, what we could in a classroom that could also be mirrored at home. Primary curriculum led by Rob opposite me. We led with a bespoke wellbeing curriculum. We led, the teachers found some playground games that we could put into the lessons. And that was really successful down in the primary school. Rob, do you want to put a little bit of information on that?
Yeah, well, just to say what Johnny said, it was bespoke to BSAT and what we could do. We got ADEC, which is the local education authority. They prescribed some things we can do and can't do. So we found traditional playground games which could be used, adhering to their sort of which went down well. As you can imagine, we created a sort of additionally to online with that to go into the classroom curriculum for our 5 and 6, which work in the classroom with both physical and theoretical concepts. And then we continue to offer live lessons and recorded PE lessons after school, much of what you guys did. But as we weren't able to deliver in school, they were able to access it outside of school, which we found was a good take up by some pupils.
So that kind of led us to the blended learning. So we had Key Stage 4 in school. We had Key Stage 2, 1 in and out of school, and we were trying to work out what was best fit there. Some of the things that we found was there was the low engagement really did continue with any videos that were dropped on. So we tried to do as much live as we can. That cultural issues came up there with videos. The way that the school did it, the form groups followed the classes round. So instead of had single sex PE, you'd be in a form group. That was so when the students came back into school, they could be easily kept at those social distance requirements. So that led us with females and males in the same class. How do we keep the videos on? And we'll come on to a few of those. Midway through term 1 this year, we got a lot of student fatigue in terms of Zoom. They just switched off. You could tell it in their eyes, especially if you had that period 1, period 2. So one of the things that the school did was something called a passion day. So they basically broke away from all curriculum lessons. The students were engaged in a passion day, which was something off the computer, a passion of the students. That could be cooking a family meal and learning through there. That could be going out for a family activity, could be creating a dress and fitting that. And it was just basically a chance for the students to switch down away from their activities. That worked really well. It also gives a pastoral link with the students and a chance for us as PE teachers to get a little bit of feedback in terms of what the students wanted from their PE lessons. We did some community engagement activities through Strava, some running competitions. We got the BTEC students up in year 13 starting to lead some practicals to get both them some practical exposure, but also a different face for the students in Key Stage 3 and Key Stage 2. And we found that started to work and our engagement started to go up. So what we learned along the way, I'm just going to stop presenting this, it doesn't seem to be coming up. The first thing for us was it was a great opportunity for us to redevelop the curriculum and have a look at what we were delivering, both in our primary curriculum and our secondary curriculum. We started to think about how we could develop our staff. So IT was a big way that we developed online. We started looking at potential planning pathways for future years. We've through action research, we've started to develop the curriculums. We looked at peer observations to develop academic teaching for some of our primary school teachers. And there was lots of potential there for research projects. The school was good enough to put some of us for our masters, NPQML and SL. So there was lots of things for us to sort of get our teeth into as a PE department to start looking into the present. For me, probably the biggest thing was to be able to adapt. I like to plan the calendar out from the end of the year and work backwards. I found that a real challenge in terms of being able to adapt and making sure that you were basically working on a 24 hours notice. Quickly, I realized that it wasn't me that we needed to worry about, it was the staff, because they were having to develop their academic lessons, their primary lessons, with very, very little notice. Student engagement, we started tracking feedback, speaking to the kids, any opportunities we could to have a look at what activities they actually wanted to do, which was good there. And then we've already started to develop our curriculum for 2020-21 or the following academic year. We had a huge budget this year, which we didn't spend on anything. We were able to keep that budget and then look at the activities and the areas that we wanted to develop and spend that for future activities in the next academic year. We looked at bridging the gap. Obviously, when the students come back, we've also already started to look at summer activities, half-term activities. Can we get camps going when the students are allowed back in to sort of bridge that gap in skills and fitness and engagement in physical activity? So they were some of the things that we started to look at. For us, really, it was a huge learning journey as we went through. Obviously, every week became a different obstacle to overturn. We work alongside a sort of education authority, ADEC here. Their rules would change. For example, academies and students can play sport outside of school. So they've all started. Commercial activities have started for students 12 to 18 originally, and then lower down in primary school, but schools haven't been able to do any physical activity. So it's being able to work with the authorities and try and work on that information the best we can. But it was a great learning journey. So we seem to be where we want to be moving forward. And if anyone's got any questions, that was some of the hurdles we came across at the school. Anything else from you, Rob?
No, I think you've covered everything, Johnny.
Perfect.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Johnny and Rob. You mentioned just about halfway through about your problems with cameras and children turning on the cameras, and we've had that challenge all the way through here as well, especially with female pupils obviously not being willing to turn their cameras on. Have you got any? Have you learned anything? Have you got any tips for colleagues who may still be having similar issues? Have you managed to get your kids to put their cameras on?
Well, it's hard. They sometimes use the cultural aspects as an excuse. Some of our students have got very cunning that their nannies actually put their videos on, but it's not actually showing then. So it looks like they're actually in the PE lesson. It hasn't. The best way that we found was actually engagement through surveys and the tabs in terms of the chats. To make sure that they were engaging in the activities. We couldn't force them to keep the videos on. We encouraged them to, especially in the older year groups, and they seemed to respond to that. We put some challenges in terms of some fitness challenges, and they like the competition aspect, and they've engaged in that. But the biggest one for us is to try and keep them engaged through that chat on a sort of lesson by lesson.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that. Right, going to move on. Conscious of time pressing on. So I would now like to move on to Cairo in Egypt and my good friend Sean Gale. Hopefully, Sean, you can hear me okay.
Yeah.
Excellent. So your question is, how have you and your school coped with delivering PE online in Egypt, and what has been the biggest thing that you have learned from the experience?
I think from when we got the call that obviously we're going to go to online learning, I think as a school we weren't fully prepared for it. I think if you hear the prospect of it coming, you think, oh, it won't hit us, and then eventually it hits you, and then you're like, well, what are we going to do? You're running around like headless chickens trying to find as much as you possibly can to give the best possibility for the students. Now, I'd say it's been a lot of trial and error since the beginning. So from March, we went completely online. We had staff in different parts of the world. Some had travelled home because the airports were shut. Some stayed in Cairo. So, we originally started with daily tasks that we offered out to the students. And these came from beat the teachers or try these different activities. And I think we understood that students were overwhelmed from the work from just their class teachers, not just PE. And I think in a majority of the schools, the academic kind of takes. So the PE is not necessarily at the forefront of all of the students' views and the parents. So once we realised that students weren't really wanting to give the work in on a daily basis, we then moved it on to weekly. So we encouraged students to take tasks. So we looked at activity log. And again, these still weren't met with the real enthusiasm from our students. And at no time did we go to live lessons, because obviously with the pressure of the students and all their other lessons, live wasn't deemed possible or needed for the school. So all we did is we used Firefly and we uploaded works. Now we tried to teach students individual sports. Now this didn't always become a success. We tried our utmost to give the students the best possible opportunity. So in the end, we choreographed and we filmed instructional videos for the students with activities and teaching points. We tried to teach the students different fitness activities. We tried volleyball, where I did some activities from outside, very basic ones, to then Tia, another colleague of mine, she did very similar activities inside the house with very limited equipment. So therefore, you know, we'd seem to be actually then accommodate all of the students. Once that, we realised that that wasn't, again, a work. So as you see, everything that we've done, it's been a massive trial and error. We've tried numerous different things. And I think at the moment we kind of got the solution, or not the solution, but an activity that's actually working for our students, where we've looked at Beat the Teachers, where we set weekly tasks. So a teacher, 6 or 7 of us would do a task for about 30 seconds, and we put a little bit of emphasis on the students trying to beat the teachers. And to be fair, when we broke up in March, this is probably the most successful return that we had from the students. We then came back after Christmas. We went to hybrid, where students were in 5 days over the 2-week block, and that happened for the first half term. And we were lucky enough to have 1 PE lesson with them a fortnight. And we looked at a lot of the fundamental movement skills, recapping a lot of what we've done in the past. And within the Key Stage 2, we also looked at some fitness-based activities with the upper Key Stage 2. And then we also looked at using some teaching games for understandings activities. And these kind of, we found the hidden gem. You know, we weren't just teaching them football. We were teaching them a lot of invasion games, but learning when to do this skill, not necessarily how to do this skill. So this was actually probably one of our, in Key Stage 2, one of our most successful aspects of it. What has been the biggest thing that I've learned through PE, I think personally, I think you have to split it academically and personally, is I think we need to take time for ourselves. You need to take time to replenish yourselves. We can all get caught up with finding the best videos, making the best resources, caught up with, you know, making the best videos, sitting online, waiting for work to come in, waiting for students to attend your lesson. But I think unless we're refreshed, we're not going to be able to perform to our best. And I've even now started taking my lunch times and break times, walking away from the computer. I also realised that if you're not in school, the regular Zoom meetings with the department to replicate like the camaraderie from the PE office is really, really important. You know, you learn a lot from each other in the department office, at break times, at lunch times. You know, you're talking about different things. You're having that little bit of fun. And I think if we're offline, or sorry, if we're online but away from the school, having those regular activities is really, really good to keep that camaraderie going. Students obviously play an active part in the school. They don't always play an active part online, and I think one of the things is we've got to remember just to give them the best opportunity to try something new, to actually want to be part of PE. Like I said, it's trial and error, trying lots of different activities to get the students engaged and wanting to take part of the thing. And I think there is no set curriculum or formula for what is right and what is wrong. I think the more that we try different activities, I think it's going to be different activities will work for some schools and different activities will work for other schools. But for us, the best return that we've had is when we've produced fun and active videos and we've encouraged the students to try to beat us or compete against us.
Lovely, thank you, Sean. There's been some really, really strong work coming out of Cairo. If any of you have seen, I don't know if we've got any colleagues from the British International School of Cairo on, but I've seen a number of virtual sports fixtures against schools all over the world, in fact, from schools in the UK, schools in Malaysia, where BISC have competed in a set of closed skills against other schools, and that sort of encouraged that competitive sport that we're all missing so much. So yeah, if you haven't seen it, have a look at some of the virtual fixtures that the schools in Egypt have been doing. Lovely, thank you, Sean. I'm going to move on. Let me just change. So we're going to move on to Bahrain, and I'm going to ask Rob to join me. Can you hear me, Rob?
Hello, Phil. Yeah, I can hear you.
Excellent. Bahrain speaking. So, Rob, question for you. How have you maintained pupil engagement during distance learning? Have you found any particular ways to keep your pupils really motivated to keep participating?
Okay. Thanks, Phil. Hello, everyone. My name is, as you know, Rob Subiani. I'm the head of PE and director of sport at St. Christopher's Senior School in Bahrain. I have been here a while, more than 10 years and less than 30. So engage and motivate students. I'm sure as PE teachers, we've all been faced with all these very similar problems, looking for the most effective way of providing a learning experience for our students. We basically, like you, had completely remodeled our curriculum. Trying to maintain students' interest, motivating them, catering for their abilities through distance learning, we knew was going to be very demanding. Students have all got different home environments. Some live in a big house with facilities, some live in apartments with no garden, so it was going to be quite difficult. Anyway, just a bit of history. We had our lockdown at St. Christopher's in Bahrain towards the end of February. School was closed, everything went online. Like Alan said, we didn't really know how long it was going online for. So basically, we had plenty of Google Meets. Like Sean mentioned, we found that very important to meet once a week. It did bring the department together, it did keep us thinking, and we were able to do a lot of preparation and work through that. So yeah, Sean, that was a very good point. Our main aim for distance learning was basically to keep the students active, keep them motivated, and basically to get them off the screens, get them out their chairs. That was our main interest, our main focus. They were sat down on their chairs for most of the day. So as a PE teacher, I thought the best thing that we can do is get them up out their chairs and get them doing things. The lockdown period, like Phil said, didn't know how long it was going on for. We decided, as you can see, we produced, this is an example of a PE poster, an activity poster. We thought long and hard, and we thought the best thing to do is offer the children a variety of activities that they could choose what they want to do. Now, they didn't necessarily have to stick to their PE lesson. We felt, because students were abroad in different countries, that this wasn't going to be possible. So we said to the students, you can choose 2, 3 different areas and have a go at the activities. There's lots there. There's diet and nutrition, dance and circuits, fitness tests, there's sports skills, HIIT workouts, and teacher challenges. What we emphasised was it has to be like teacher-led. There needs to be teacher videos so the students can see the teachers involved, which we thought was quite important. So the students had the choice what they could do throughout the week. What we could do then is we would meet them in their PE lesson time to discuss what they did and how it all went. So basically at the end of each session, they filled in a feedback form, which the students reflected on their learning, on what they did, what they can improve on. Did they enjoy it? They would also send teachers some iMovies, which was brilliant. When we received all that information, we had a lot of things that we could discuss and interact with the students. And I think that helped motivate the students when we could talk to them about what they've been doing at home. It did receive a lot of positive feedback from students, staff, and even our SMT appreciated it. So we did that for a number of weeks for different age groups, year 7s, right through to year 11s. We mixed it up a little bit during like House Sports Week. We did a virtual House Sports Week, which was very well received by the students. It was like a mini sports day. Students did 8 different activities. They got points for activities, so they were quite keen to get points for their houses. Simple things like long jump activities, vertical jumps, keepy ups, shooting hoops, things like that. It just was a bit of fun for them. And we got quite a few results in, and we were able to present like a house winner at the end of it. So that's what we did during the lockdown. We felt it was quite well received. It changed every week. We updated it every week, so there was new things getting put on there. So there's a huge resource bank that we were able to produce. Come September, school's open. Great, we're into hybrid learning. Like many of you, we had classes in bubbles, combination of hybrid and full-time students. I would say our school is about 60% full. Similar to Johnny, they were taught in their form groups. We spent a long time in the summer deciding what we were going to do when we're going to go back. And we came up, well, we found on Facebook, actually, I don't know if you've seen it, it's a great concept. It's called the Penalty Box. It's a fitness workout, and it's just basically a square on the floor with 4 squares inside. And from that, we were able to produce hundreds of different exercises, and it was great. A few things that it was good for was it located the students in one area, so there was no interaction with other students, so it was safe, because we're a bit concerned about distancing. Staff made some videos of these fitness boxes, just in case students were unable to do it at that time, so they had a big resource bank. The best thing about it was we were live to the students. In class, we had our iPads there that we were filming ourselves. We could see students. Yeah, not all students were online, but we found a lot were, and they did enjoy it. So what we did in school was reciprocated to what students were able to do at home. We basically became glorified Joe Wickses for about 6 weeks, and it was actually quite good fun. We got fit. The kids got fit as well. And towards the end of it, the students started designing their own fitness boxes, which was great. They would share their ideas with other students. They completed fitness quizzes, which checked their understanding, so we could see if they were understanding what exercise they were doing and the benefits of that exercise. And the feedback from the students and parents was reasonably positive, because they said their students were up out of their chair, they were doing things. More recently, in our PE lessons, we tried to teach the remote learners a similar sort of thing, what we're doing in school. For example, like today in my Year 10 athletics class, the students in school, they were doing middle distance running. So online students, I spoke to in the beginning of the lesson, they had a video, and their challenge was a 12-minute Cooper run. And so they basically downloaded the app, they took a screenshot of their 12-minute Cooper run, and they showed us how far they ran in 12 minutes. So, I mean, if they could do that, that was great. And they sent us videos and footage of that. What else is there? I mean, basically, there's some ideas. We basically work on a 6 weeks block, 6 to 8 week block. When we come towards the end of the block, we have a look at the restrictions, we have a look at what's been lifted, and that gives us an idea of where we can move on to next. I hope that's given you some ideas. Basically, we try to make the best of what we've got at the moment, and that's where we are at the moment. I hope that makes sense.
Lovely, thank you, Rob. Thanks for that. I guess this question is to all our speakers. We've had a question that says, what do your school leadership teams expect you to receive from pupils on a weekly basis? So I'll go first. We have to submit, our people have to submit at least one piece of work per week. That can either be video or written work, depending on what the activity is. Does anyone else, any of our speakers, or in fact anyone else want to tell us what their school is expecting? Okay, what we'll do, I'll post the question on the forum, and we'll see if we can get some answers. So thank you, Adam, for there's one answer. So yeah, I'll post it on the network forum, and we'll see if other people want to reply to it. So thank you to all our speakers. Thank you to all of you. Hopefully everyone listening will have heard something that has either supported what you're doing and has emphasized that we're all, regardless of where we are across the region, all in the same position, and a lot of us are doing very similar things to each other. And hopefully you will have come up with, or you will have heard some new and different ideas and things that perhaps you can build into your programs moving forward. I will share everybody's contact details on the forum after the event. You can contact us all via via social media if you have any questions or you want to have a wider discussion. Please do remember to share the webinar with colleagues at your schools. It will be available in the next sort of 48 hours on the network page. So please do share it with colleagues that weren't able to join us. And as BSME members, remember you are also eligible to watch the webinars of any of the networks, including teaching and learning, leadership, safeguarding. So take advantage. There were 12 other webinars running at the same time as this one today, and 12 yesterday as well. So please do take advantage of them. Our next PE webinar will be in March and is focused on increasing engagement in PE for female pupils across our region, which is a real key thing, certainly for me here. And I'm delighted to tell you we have a very special guest speaker. I'm not going to give it away, but it is definitely not one you want to miss. If you have any questions about anything you've heard in the webinar, please either post them in the Q&A discussion forum on the network page or drop me an email. And in fact, please just engage with the network forums and the discussions. They are a tool for us to use, and the more people that engage with them, the more we will benefit from it. So all that really remains for me to do is to thank all our wonderful speakers today. Alan, Lewis, Johnny, Sean and Rob, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Thank you to everyone that joined us today. Thank you to those of you watching the recording of this webinar afterwards. If any of you are sitting there feeling like you would like to be involved in a future webinar or contribute to the program, please do just drop me an email, get in touch with me. My email's on the network forum. Otherwise, take care of yourselves and your departments and have a great week. Thank you very much.
Thank you.